Hello, and welcome to DesignTV's Lens of Design. I'm Carol Kurth, principal of Carol Kurth Architecture and Interiors based in Bedford, New York. Throughout my award-winning career, I've been fortunate to collaborate with our clients and my team on design projects from near and far. Design is my passion, and today I want to share a new tool I've been using. It's the stylish new camera, Ricoh Theta. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you know I've been having a great time working with the camera, and I'm happy to share with you how you can benefit from it as well. The Ricoh Theta 360-degree cameras have become an essential tool that I always bring with me to project sites. If you aren't familiar with 360-degree cameras, they feature two fisheye lenses to capture the entire environment around the camera, resulting in lifelike, immersive images. These sleek, compact cameras are easy to use and can capture an entire room with just the click of a button. Theta cameras have helped me streamline my workflow by capturing immersive, high-quality images of projects that I can easily share with my team and clients, ultimately reducing the number of trips I need to take to the job site and saving time. Ricoh offers two models that are perfect for interior designers and architects. If you're on a budget, the SC2 for business is a cost-effective model that is super simple to use, and it features a room preset mode, which is really easy to use with a tripod and automatically adjusts light, contrast for optimal interior space shooting. What does that mean? If you're shooting in a dark room with a bright light streaming in through the windows, the camera balances the light for you. It's useful for darker spaces where the lighting may not have been installed yet. I'm also finding it helpful for site surveying. And if you're in the market for something more advanced, the Theta Z1 flagship model offers the highest quality images and video with 1-inch sensors and raw availability, expanded storage capacity, and customizable shooting modes. This one is just perfect for shooting finished projects and creating high quality virtual tours. I find these cameras so fun to use, even in my day-to-day life, to shoot fun scenes around the city, trade shows, and landmarks. I was recently at the Edge. It was great. With Theta's editing app, Theta Plus, I've been able to manipulate shots into dynamic graphic works of art. And of course, for work, the images are helping me to showcase my design projects in the best light from start to finish. So you can see for yourself, I'm going to be touring you through a few of my projects. The first one is Tango House in Connecticut. At Tango House, we're using materials that are both from nature and from inspiration on the site. So we've got this beautiful wood that is representative of the beautiful tree-lined site. We've got a concrete texture that wraps from the inside to the outside and draws the line through the house. And then we have this amazing materiality of a textured stone at the fireplace that is the focal point of the home. That stone at the fireplace is a really organic form as it comes from nature, and it is also a textured stone. So part of the design of the fireplace itself was working with the natural versus the man-made. So you've got the irregular forms of the geometric topography lines within the stone, and it's hand chiseled. So the Tango House got its name because of the amazing dance studio that is at the top level of Tango House. It has a curved roof form that's reminiscent of one of the moves in tango dance. And suspended from the ceiling is this gorgeous light cloud that we've created. Really, it's like an effervescent series of bubbles. It adds a beautiful dimension, both sculpturally as well as from an illumination standpoint. So the tango room is, dramatic, it's sexy, and it's functional. One way I find my Theta cameras useful is for site surveying. Since the cameras allow me to capture an entire room in just one click, I'm easily able to document space layout, design elements, artwork, placement. So as a project progresses, I can reference my 360 photos to help me remember the details of a space without having to trek back to the job site. It saves so much time. This also comes in handy if a client wants to make changes, and I can look back on a finished project and the images and the plans that we've done and use those photos as a guide. Being able to share 360 images with my team members and clients has been helpful as well. I simply upload to Google Images and share out a link so those I'm working with can see the full picture without having to physically be on site. Aren't those shots amazing? Let me show you another project, our Blue Heron Guest House, located in Bedford, New York. Stone walls are indigenous to the area where the Blue Heron Guest Cottage is. And those stone walls are farm walls from hundreds of years ago. And that was the inspiration to create this interior-exterior stone wall effect at the guest cottage. The project is aptly called the Blue Heron Guest Cottage because blue herons, the birds, are found in this area. And the slate color of their feathers is the color that is on the paint of the ribbed walls that we've created here for this space. The ribbed walls are also a feature that are both exterior and interior. So you get this sense that with these floor to ceiling windows and the materiality, that the outside and the inside are a blurring of the boundaries. Nature is always an inspiration for me and for my projects, and this project is no exception. The bunk room is a really fun way to interpret nature. It has a camp theme. The project is on a lake, and the family comes to stay. And we've got space for all the children, grandchildren here in the bunk room. There's a lake and fishing theme represented by these handmade, hand-painted paddles that form the bunk sides of the bed. The bedding itself has a camping theme, and each bunk has its own little niche for children's storybooks and reading lights. And so the family can gather together and the kids just have a great time in this really fun bunk room space. After all the finishing touches have been placed on a space, I use my Theta to showcase my finished projects. The high quality immersive images captured with the Z1 and RAW mode offer the full view of a completed space. The Wi-Fi connectivity makes transferring to your smartphone so easy, and you can use the Theta Plus app to edit and create cool effects and animations on the photos. And then you can directly upload to social media or incorporate it in marketing materials. Ricoh offers us the opportunity to showcase our projects with dimensionality, illustrating our design ethos, architecture as a backdrop for living, and interiors as an inspiration for lifestyle. Ricoh also offers a proprietary platform called Ricoh Tours, where you can create high-quality virtual tours. Complete walkthroughs of a space is just amazing. We should all go out and experience the world in 360 degrees. I hope you've enjoyed seeing some of my projects through the lens of the Ricoh Theta. To learn more about the innovation and ease of how Ricoh Theta can capture interior design and architectural projects like mine, visit theta360.com. And follow me on Instagram at Carol Kurth and on our website at carolkurtharchitecture.com. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Lens of Design on DesignTV with Ricoh Camera.
I describe this place as being kind of timeless. It's like you can come back here, and if you didn't know what year this was, you might have a hard time guessing. I used to paint kind of as a hobby, but my painting started getting a lot better when I started hanging out here and painting.
So in a typical year, Oxbow has its bread and butter in the summer, and we offer a full roster of, upwards of 50 classes that can be taken for college credit or not. We have specialty studios in metals, in ceramics, in glass, and in print. We also have, a rich history and also present of painting classes happening here. We also have visiting artists during the summer So every week a different visiting artist comes to work with folks on campus. They're not here in a traditional teaching capacity, but they do an artist lecture and other programming that people on campus can engage with.
I think Oxbow, it has lived a very long time as a very organic, loose organization, where other places like it may have already failed, you know, decades, generations ago. It's tenacious, and it's, you know, it's tenacious about its style, and it has, you know, managed to sustain itself. So some part of me feels like it's delivered on something over and over again to a point where people who know about it, it's like the art world's best kept secret or something. Like people who kind of are in the know and know about it. They all say magical, which is fascinating to me. Everyone says, oh, it's magical. Like people who came here 10 years ago that I meet are like, oh, it's so magical. They're like, okay, it's magical. But there does seem to be a kind of word of mouth about Oxbow that maintains that.
Whether people are here for literally 2 weeks for an artist residency or a class, or here for, you know, 25 years, as some of our staff have been, it is a place that really leaves a mark on people, that people return to, whether physically or just, you know, in their minds. Really wonderful people are drawn here. You know, I think there is like a truth to some places and some communities have this energy and this frisson that just like attracts people who want to care and want to be involved. A thing that I often say is like, if you're not interested in community, if you're not invested in actively being involved in a creative, caring community, this is not the place for you. It's not the place for an artist who's interested in just being in their studio, advancing their own career in a very, you know, solo kind of auteur, stereotypical way. This is a place for people who really care about exchange.
Having this very cross-generational group of people living and working together for an intense period of time is just, it's generous and it's challenging, and I think that's the thing that shakes things loose for people. It's like a place where people can, I think, be very vulnerable, but it feels safe to be very vulnerable.
Seeing everybody here be so accepting of each other, it's like, why can't I do that for myself? If I told people here who've only known me for a few months things I think about myself sometimes, then they'd be like, you're insane, don't say that about my friend Lucy. So seeing that kind of self-acceptance and self-care modeled by other people here has been really influential.
The history about Oxbow that hits me the most are these like costume parties.
I'm sure people have talked to you about the parties that we have on Friday nights.
We love dancing, having big dance parties is always a priority as often as we can. It feels very summer camp, but we all like really respect each other as professionals and experts. Like we can be as silly and weird as we want to be, but at the end of the day, there's like so many people here who are like technically like so good at their jobs and also know how to be a total clown. So that's like a big part of the spirit. It's just master clown.
I think the dining situation, meal times are the heart of Oxbow because it's what brings everyone together. It's scheduled 3 times a day. You know it's going to be there. And it's a chance for you to like break out of that classroom setting and talk face to face. Sharing a meal is a very intimate experience and it's a very magical experience. And like being able to share a meal like with, say, a visiting artist who's here, who's like maybe someone that you admire from your art classes, you can literally like sit down and have a meal with them. Like where else in the world can you do that with your idols? Such as like Claus Oldenburg washed dishes here at one point, which I find super rad. And like Jim Henson spent time here.
I love the way that feeding everybody together builds community. It brings people together in a way that breaks down hierarchies.
I find it really exciting to be the sustenance behind all of this like revolutionary art making and like all of these radical thoughts that are happening here. in most educational settings, you're not sharing meals with your teachers and you're not drinking a beer at the fire with your teachers. And here you get to really, it kind of breaks down the hierarchy of student-teacher relationships, and that can be a very powerful and transformative experience.
The academic institutional environment can be so performative, you know, but at Oxbow there's more space where people can kind of, you know, remove that a bit more, sometimes literally, and can engage in more of a fuller spectrum.
But coming here as faculty was a really positive experience for me. It felt like a place you could really break, you know, with tradition, or you could sort of try out radical different things and have a much more holistic, cohesive classroom teaching, mentoring experience. And it really was an amazing experience for me as a teacher. I really see it as a pretty exceptional environment to get an education. I think all of the things about Oxbow that people love, that it's this like beautiful community, or it's this kind of social aspect to it that they value, I can appreciate that that's what they value, and I think that's amazing. But to me, it's that it's such a phenomenal learning environment. It's so intergenerational, and it just allows for a kind of risk-taking and mess-making that a regular program wouldn't provide.
This place offers a lot of room for experimentation. I mean, I remember students, like, from a painting class, actually, like, taking a canoe out into the lagoon, having sort of rigged up like a wooden oil painting box situation that had like a flotation device in the bottom, diving into the water, and then working on a painting, like a watercolor, like dipping her paintbrush in the lagoon and then painting on the... I just feel like those sort of things, this place sort of like asks you to kind of think outside the box and do crazy stuff.
I run the metal shop, but it's a very flexible space, so it can turn into like more of a wood shop. It can be a space for like more performance-based classes or research-based classes. It's like a whole variety. It's all the way up to like hardcore blacksmithing and foundry with like pouring iron and things that are maybe a little closer to my wheelhouse. So I'm used to being in a metal shop that is just a metal shop, but this place, like almost everything is on wheels and it changes constantly, and I have to change too. And also the metal shop is almost entirely outdoors, and I think sometimes, as much as I explain that to faculty ahead of time, sometimes people still show up and are very surprised that we're like susceptible to all the elements up there. It's great on like beautiful days, but sometimes it rains for a whole week and you have to be really flexible.
I think the thing that I didn't even know was possible till I was here was that kind of the joy in innovating constantly, because you're constantly getting feedback, as opposed to having this very tight 3 hours of a class. Everyone goes home, gets on with their life, everything changes. But being in it sort of constantly on a day-to-day basis, it allowed for this really responsive, flexible way of teaching. Just like, yeah, let's do it like this. I could just change it. Let's go pick up these things. Let's go dumpster diving for cardboard right now, because that's what we need. But I think that kind of like responsiveness was exciting, honestly. And I don't know, I mean, the things that the students that I worked with made, and the conclusions that they came to, or the paths that they went down, and then the kind of things that I would hear from them afterwards about how that had been like the best class, the best experience of their life, the best class they'd ever taken, years later saying that this class completely changed their life, or they apply things they learned in that class to, you know, radically different parts of their life. Like, that blows my mind. That is something that I guess I feel like is really possible when you have this sort of all-in 24/7 teaching and learning experience that you would never get in a regular classroom.
In order to want to take the kind of risks necessary for creative output, there has to be like a certain level of like safety around you, you know, like hierarchy of needs style. Like you have to be fed. Like, we feed people really well here. You have space. Like, yeah, the community element is just like a sounding board of folks who, you know, will like give you honest feedback where you can fail, and like, I'm not gonna lose my job here if I make bad art. And I'm not gonna lose my friends either. It's like you can, if you have that space to fail, then you also have space to like surprise yourself.
We are family, really. We kind of just want to have this sort of bubble in the woods be the way we wish the rest of the world could be, I think.
It is a place that will shift your thinking and shift your work in ways that are really exciting and beneficial. You know, it'll lead to growth somewhere in your life, personally or in the studio. And I think that's the best I could say, because it seems like it's different for different people what that is, you know? But consistently, that's what people say. So, you know, it's also just gorgeous, and it's a wonderful place to sort of be in the summer. It's a beautiful environment. It's rich with history. We feed people incredibly good meals. You know, I mean, all of those things are true, but there's a force that happens in this living in a small, intimate community as a learning environment that'll just like, it'll challenge you in really positive ways.
Hi, I'm Meg Joannides. I'm a designer based in Los Angeles, and I'm coming to you from the Thomas Lavin Showroom in the Pacific Design Center in Los Angeles. I wanted to talk to you today about how to create a successful furniture layout. I like to start with sketches. I'm kind of old school, but I like to use a piece of tracing paper and sketch over the architectural plans, laying out different ideas of shapes of the pieces of furniture and how they will feel inside the walls of a particular home. Once we're happy with the sketches, we will actually draft in AutoCAD, which will give us the ability to precisely lay out to the last eighth of an inch where everything goes. What's really important is to take into consideration how the spaces flow. Is the plan an open plan, or are you dealing with a series of more closed-off rooms? As a kid, I was really good at geometry, so for me, looking at how these shapes fit together from the top down is a very specific gift that I think that I have, because I will move and scale and rearrange until I feel like it's a really harmonious balance of shapes and sizes within each room. Oftentimes we build a furniture plan around a very specific and iconic piece of furniture, such as the bookshelf behind me. We actually did that. This is a Liaigre design, which we customized and made 16 feet long, and that was the focal point of one of the rooms that we were designing, and that drove the decision making for all of the other pieces. A lot of people think interior design is easy and it's just about putting furniture in a room and you can call up your local furniture store and order something without doing a plan, but that's not it. We labor over how these pieces fit together and what the clearances are between the furniture pieces and whether the leg of a sofa is going to bother you when you're turning a corner. Ultimately, the goal is to create a wonderful home environment for the family that lives there. Of course, we want to be proud of every project and we want to be able to show it, publish it, put it on our websites, but the goal is a comfortable, beautiful home for the people that live there, and that's what we ultimately strive for.
design friends, this is Cindy Allen, Editor-in-Chief of Interior Design, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with the President and CEO of Miller Knoll, Andy Owen. And boy, we have a whole lot of design and business to discuss. So let's get to know Andy better, hear all about her vision for Miller Knoll, their commitment to a better world, and of course, we'll talk about the future of work. So are you ready? Here we go. Andy, I'm so happy to see you.
Cindy, me too. It's been a while. So glad we can finally connect with all the craziness in the world. And thank you for using our new name. It's so nice to hear.
Of course. Well, so for everyone out there, which is so cool, is that like Andy was so generous about talking to us, like almost at the beginning of the pandemic, I want to say. It was a really long time ago. And we started taping and then technology, Wi-Fi was not allowing it to happen. So it's kind of crazy that like, oh, in between, look what happened.
Just a few things, right? For
I know.
All of us.
I know. So it really does feel like it's the right time to chat. And I thank you so much for being so generous with just your thoughts and openness to the industry and sharing with all of us.
I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. So, all right. First of all, for everyone out there, you'll tell us, but you've really had an illustrious career in an entirely different industry. And it's given you a unique perspective for sure. And now you've had the advantage, you've been with us in it for a few years, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the industry and what really drew you to us. Maybe to get started, just share some highlights of your background.
Oh, I'm not sure I would call it illustrious, Cindy, but that's very kind of you. You know, I spent the majority of my career in the fashion industry, and I have always really been attracted to sort of that intersection of creativity and business. And when I landed at the Gap, when I was early in my career, I found that. And I think it's, you know, a lot of people's first jobs, but it was an amazing place to learn and to grow. And there are a lot of things I carried from that industry into this. But it was a great career. And I would say I didn't really think I would find another industry that was as exciting or as wonderful. And here I am. And I have to say that there's so many wonderful things that drew me here. But number one, as you know, from being in the design industry for so many years, the people. So the talent and the creativity and just the amazing folks that I interact with every day have been just fantastic.
You know, I say, you know, when people are outside of the industry, I always say, wow, you are so lucky to have found us, right? Yes. Don't you feel like that? I mean, fashion is, I have lots of friends in fashion too. So, but still, once you make it into the design world, it's like, wow. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think all of us that have come from creative industries have gone through the whole, you know, design thinking and what is design thinking? But until you actually are surrounded by people that are actually committed to problem solving design and how it can change people's lives, I think that to me was just a really, really great window to open. And then I say this all the time, but going from an industry that was so transformed by the digital revolution and so shaken to the core to another industry that's kind of in the process of the same transformation has been a really interesting and unique process. And the last thing I'll say is that what I love about this industry is that I really feel like not only are we solving problems, but we are creating things that make people's lives better and things that are not disposable, things that are heirlooms, things that you can hang on to, whether that's the amazing design of a space or a furniture product. So that's been a pretty nice transition for me as well.
I mean, fashion is so quick. It's definitely quicker than design for sure. For sure. I know you'll talk about that, but we used to always say that we sort of followed fashion, but it's very unique these days that everyone is interested in design, right? Everybody wants to be close and touch design because, as you said, the transformation in people's lives.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you know, you might say that the last, 18 months or however long it's been has been, difficult and horrible and chaotic and crisis. But to me, there's so many opportunities and so many interesting problems for us to solve and to think about, because not only has the way we work changed, but the way we live has changed so dramatically. And so when you think about design and the impact that design can have on the world and what we do as a broader community every day, I think it's just a really, really interesting and exciting time to be a part of it.
For sure. Okay, so I want your perspective and those observations that you see as being, well, you're not an outsider anymore, but that other kind of experience that you had. Give us the truth. Give us some truths.
You know, you said it before, Cindy, and I'll echo it. Fashion is really fast. The industry that we're in now is a little bit slower. And I think for me, having come from an industry that was so transformed digitally and so shaken, coming to this industry was a little different, a little hard. And I think in some ways, we do have some catch up to do as far as how technology can enable what we do and how we think, how we design, how we solve problems. And in some ways, the pandemic, I think, has really brought that to the forefront and has sort of forced so much of that transition and so much of that change on our industry. But I have to say at the same time that I think the thoughtfulness and the core capability of understanding what we're here to do and how it benefits the end user or the client, I would hate to give that up in favor of speed. I do think there's a nice balance in how we think about what we do, especially at Miller Knoll, and I think in the design industry as a whole. So I wouldn't want to make us too much faster, but I think that the world has changed enough that I think that's one of the things that the industry will benefit from.
For sure. I still think about over this time period, the pleasure that the designers had when they got back together in the office to do their job, the part of their job that mattered the most that you couldn't do virtually. And there is something about that is very gratifying to know that it can't all be done, as you said, over airways or because of speed.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I was sitting with John Hoke, who's the creative director at Nike, and he was lamenting how you can't have a spontaneous creative interaction on a video screen. Like everything is very scheduled. So having that when you're back in person, and in some ways, we were all moving towards more of a hybrid or remote environment to begin with, but this great experiment has really let us see the good and the bad of what that looks like. And that's one of those things that I think we've all missed, particularly those people in the creative professions like us.
Yeah. How hard was it for you having pretty much just gotten there and being a leader? How personally, how difficult was that?
Oh gosh, I think it was probably the same for me as it was for everyone else. It was really hard. But what I have to say is, as I'm sure you know, I have a great, amazing group of people that I work with. And I take very little credit for what we went through. And I give all credit to them because, our manufacturing plants worked throughout the whole crisis. We had amazing people putting their brains towards how we could get through this and creatively solve a whole number of problems. So it's been hard, but I think a real benefit, and I can't speak for Knoll Legacy because I wasn't involved in the business, but in hindsight, the Miller Knoll, both cultures, we're very purpose-driven organizations. And I think in times like these, more than ever, our responsibilities as leaders is to really keep people focused on that purpose. And, our purpose is to design for the good of humankind. And that's a great purpose when you're trying to get through a pandemic, right? And I think, Andrew at Knoll did the same thing. So I have to give a ton of credit to the team for rallying around, and then also just being able to rely on all these thousands of people that are really purpose-driven.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so we have to talk about this. We want to talk about this. You made headlines earlier this year. Oh my God, you made headlines when you announced the union of Herman Miller and Knoll to create Miller Knoll. So I want to know everything, but maybe you could just give us share part of the journey.
Yeah, it's one of the things when I first got to Herman Miller that was on my mind. And I was sort of like, oh, I wonder if I'm the first person that's ever thought of this. Well, I'm not. And I would say that both the leadership at Knoll and leadership at Herman Miller have over the years really looked at this as a combination. And I think one of the reasons is there's so much shared legacy and history and so many commonalities between how we think about what we do. Certainly all the special friendships between the Eameses and Saarinen and all those people in Cranbrook in the background certainly tie us together from a legacy perspective. But I think going back to how we view design and its importance in what we do every day and the products that we create really ties us together. And so now, kind of as one of the largest design companies in our industry, I think it's a pretty dramatic and transformative time. So in many ways, it feels a little bit like it was meant to be over the years. And in other ways, it feels like really just an exciting moment in time, I think, for the industry and for both of our organizations to come together.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you talk about the commonalities.
Yeah.
Don't they say it's something about, like, you know, the line between something that's much, the line between love and hate is very close, or something like, you know what I mean? Like two companies that had did, you know, you say that and you go, yes, of course, all those commonalities, but they were competitors, right? So it makes sense when you say that, when you bring it up in that way, when also when you think about, or as you were probably going through the process, this idea of somehow you guys were on paths that were meant to be together.
Well, I think you're right. We were fierce competitors.
Right.
And I think along with being fierce competitors comes a very, very healthy level of respect, right? There's people that you're always afraid that show up at an RFP next to you, and you don't want to see those people because they have such great competitive strengths. And I think Knoll was always one of those. And part of that is our commitment to some of those things that are common. And I think another thing, Cindy, is our culture and how we think about our partnerships with the design world, how we think about innovation, how we think about problem solving. Those things are super similar. And then if you kind of look back to transformative points in time in history, and I think about Florence Knoll and the planning unit and how that kind of changed the way corporate environments were, and then Robert Probst and the cubicle, I mean, like it or lump it, that was also a moment in time. So those kinds of things really do create kind of this fabric, but also, you know, the perceptions of competition. And when you actually get into the two companies, I think we've had the real blessing and privilege of seeing the other side, which is, oh, wow, look at this amazing, talented group of people that brought together kind of 1 + 1 makes 3.
Right. Yeah, that's terrific. What is the process with bringing these two companies together? Like, what has that been like?
I can say, honestly, it's a massive effort, right? I mean, I think any integration is. I think ultimately our goal throughout the process has been to really make sure that we are bringing the best of both legacy organizations together, because we do have just an amazing group of people. I think we're lucky that we share similar values and beliefs, but the critical thing here is of the 19 brands that we're bringing together, every single one of them has their own kind of zeitgeist and their own design aesthetic and point of view. And as we think about integration, you know, I always say it's kind of like getting married. You know, you used to pay rent twice, and you everything, all of a sudden you can combine your forces and invest in the future. But at the same time, you don't want to lose your individual personality. So that's the caretaking that I think has been most top of mind for us, along with really thinking about how do we address the customer facing and partner facing parts of this first. So how do we make sure that we're showing up in front of the people that we're serving and our design partners in the world in as organized a way as we can quickly, because everybody wants to get to the other side of this quickly. So it's a big process, but we have a lot of smart people working on it. So we'll get through it.
Yeah, you know, also the A&D industry, I mean, the designers, they kind of tell you also what they need if you ask them, right? They're very open and very passionate, and they're a great support because we're all together, right?
Yeah, it's true, Cindy, and it's been great because part of this process is we did a lot of interviews with our design partners, and we found out a lot of great information about, okay, what do they want us to do first, and what do they want to see? What could we do more of on both legacy companies? So that's been fantastic. And I would say with any situation like this, we're going to make mistakes along the way, and we're going to do some things well and not well. But we're really, really fortunate to have such strong partnerships in the design community, and our commitment to that continues. And we know that we will always get honest and thoughtful feedback, and that helps us, right? It helps us provide what our partners need, and it also helps us be better and be more innovative as we move forward.
Yeah, I always like kind of smile at the designers too, because they tell you, like, sometimes they just tell you how they feel about something. They're like very forthright and upfront, whether you want to hear it or not, right? So
Yes,
so
and I love that actually, and I think I could speak for most of the folks in the company. We love that. That's important because that's what makes us better, right?
Yeah.
That feedback and that constructive criticism, and also the occasional, attagirls and attaboys.
right,
Also,
exactly. What should we expect to see next? And maybe most importantly, what should the A&D clients, your clients, what should they expect to see next?
that's a great question. And I think over the next 3 to 4 months, you'll start to see our branding roll out. For those of you in New York, we were in Times Square with our branding for Miller Knoll and NASDAQ and our new stock ticker, which was really exciting. So you'll start to see kind of the Miller Knoll identity come to life.
Congrats on that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been really great. And then for A&D clients, I would say probably the most significant next step has really been all the work we're doing towards building out our Miller Knoll dealer network. This has been a really thoughtful process. And from the beginning of this journey, I think one of the most compelling things to us about this merger was our combined product portfolio. And along with that, we really have to leverage that portfolio, but also make it easier for our partners and our dealers to access it, specify it, order it, all of those things. So we've been working behind the scenes to make sure that dealer network is set up so that we can work with our partners.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a very complex process. And
it is.
But hey, the good news is that, as you say, that designers are going, hello, I want to start ordering.
Right.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, God forbid it was the opposite, right? But so
Yeah.
now we've got a couple of small market pilots, working with Miller Knoll dealers, so we can learn all that fun stuff about the logistics and back of house and technology and all of that stuff. So we'll work through that for the next couple of months. And then by mid 2022, we should be complete with that transformation. And that's the first step I would see. And then I would say, in the meantime, it's business as usual for all of our dealer partners, and we'll continue to work with both legacy businesses.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, there you go. So it's happening, everybody. It's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening. It's happening. Okay. So let's segue over to something that is really important to all of us, and something we need to talk about, which is social impact.
Yeah.
And what would you say is your vision for how Miller Knoll can positively affect change in communities, help better people's lives? What kind of initiatives have you got planned?
Listen, I think, our purpose, which I said before, designing for the good of humankind, all the words in that purpose really matter. And I think in the DNA of both of our organizations has been a commitment to not only sustainability of the environment, but sustainability of integrity in our communities and diversity. And so I think we'll continue kind of to leverage design, not only to problem solve for beautiful environments, but also to problem solve for people's lives. We think we can be integral, and we think the design community is integral to solving some of these larger problems in our society, which, as we all know, in the last couple of years have become even more important. And I have to say, Cindy, I was actually pretty shocked and embarrassed when I started to look at the stats of what the design community looks like, and how few Black designers we actually have in our world. And so when we really started to familiarize ourselves with some of the issues there, we got the idea to launch the Diversity in Design Collaborative. And Herman Miller and Knoll were both founding members of this. And really the purpose of this is to bring like-minded companies together to share best practices, to make our efforts more concerted, to really find ways to increase the talent pipeline for Black and Brown designers. So whether that's from introducing them to the fabulous career of design and all sorts of design, graphic, interior, you name it, at a younger age, to helping them find educational opportunities, to helping them find internships, and then ultimately to helping them find work. So we sort of launched this idea at sort of like a kitchen table. Hey, what if we build it, will they come?
Right.
And then they did. We had 19 founding companies, and we've doubled that, and then over 300 companies that are knocking on the door to get involved. So this is really not about Miller Knoll. It's about, I think, the design community and the difference that we can make. So that's one of the things that we're doing. And I'm excited to see the impact that I think we'll make there.
Yeah, for everyone out there. So it's DID, right?
DID. We have a website. We have a great team of people that are dedicated to bringing folks together. And again, it's just a great environment to share ideas, to see what other people are doing, and to bring resources together so that we can, again, make a concerted effort to solve the problem.
Can you share some of your sustainable initiatives?
I would say on the sustainability front, we've joined together with Next Wave Plastics. I'm sure you saw. I am a dyed-in-the-wool environmentalist, so I've kind of found myself in the perfect place at Miller Knoll. But we really tried to find a way that we could not only reduce our use of single-use plastics, but also look at our products and see if we picked one product that could make the biggest difference to use ocean-bound plastics, what would it be? And so we picked Heron, and we spent a couple of years trying to figure out how to make it with ocean-bound plastics. And we're super excited that we've launched it, and we anticipate we'll take about 23 million plastic bottles from reaching the ocean. So that's one of the initiatives that we have. We have tons more. Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say on this, we have a day of purpose. This is our second annual day of purpose, which was yesterday. It's election day in the US. And we use that to, we thought if we gave people the day off, it would remove some obstacles to voting, which we think is a big issue in the world. But also for our global employees, really to give them a day off to volunteer and to do things that matter in a way that gives them purpose. And so every time we do this, it's only the second time, but I'm so inspired by what people go out and do and how they give back to their communities. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's part of who we are. And we think it'll make a difference. Every little bit helps, right?
For sure. And I'm so proud of the entire design industry, just in terms of their willingness and wanting to change and move to something better. I mean, that is the thing about the design industry, right? They are change agents. So when you talk about diversity or when you talk about sustainability, I mean, everyone wants to actually have a conversation about, right? This is how you change. So,
and it's so interesting that you say that, Cindy, because one of the things I've noticed, while being shocked at the numbers and the data and representation, what I've also been shocked and really surprised and happy about is how quickly this community has banded around this as a problem and has looked for solution and jumped in. And I think it's just that mindset of innovation and problem solving that I think is really inspirational. So I have a ton of faith and confidence this community will solve this problem like we solve so many others.
Let's talk about something we've been talking about, which is the future of work. The big question that doesn't really have one answer. Actually, thank God it doesn't have one answer.
No.
But I agree. Do you believe that offices are still relevant? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I think you do, Cindy. It's the burning question, and it will be no surprise to you that I say yes. I think shared workspaces are still relevant. Our VP of Insights, Ryan Anderson, always kind of likens the experience of an office to a restaurant. It's like you may have an amazing kitchen at home and you may be a great cook, but the restaurant offers you an experience that you can't necessarily get in your home, and we feel the same way. But to your earlier point about sort of how this workspace and everything is evolving, we've really been using all of our own workspaces as labs. And so we started innovating and changing our retail workspaces in Stamford, Connecticut. We've used the design yard in Michigan, Maine site in Michigan, our Hong Kong offices to really redo them and say, if we were to take a neighborhood approach and we were to look at every function and how they want to come together and collaborate, how they want to work together, how would we change our own spaces so that we can account for hybrid and technology? And what if you have meetings where only 3 people are there and the rest are virtual? So really taking that as an opportunity to learn and innovate on our own campuses, because we've been back in the office for quite some time now, and our manufacturing folks have never left the office. So as we kind of learn and make our own mistakes and have our own victories, then it gives us the opportunity to share that with all of our clients, because they're all figuring it out too. I think I've spent more time with other CEOs talking about shared workspaces and how we're going to come back in the last couple of months than I have in my whole career. So a really interesting time and lots of learning there.
Yeah, I'm obviously been talking to designers nonstop, and it is for them is also such an exciting time to have those conversations with their clients, right? They haven't had that type of conversation maybe in their entire careers, just in terms of this like almost unending flexibility of how people work. And for them, it's also a great freedom and a great opportunity to think differently I mean, look, I think you said that too. We've been doing a lot of things right, getting up, getting ready to the, so there's a lot for us to be proud of, but this other type of shift is new for everybody. And to talk about it and think about what is the future of the office look like, it's there. It's just going to be different for everybody, right?
Absolutely. And I think that difference is what makes it fun. If you try, you know, how can you be intentional about the experience you want? What's the feedback you're getting from your employees and what do they need and want? And that's really critical. You know, how are they feeling? You know, some of the stuff that we've learned is that there's so much desire to have flexibility in working, but it's not just where you work, it's when you work. You know, we founded Future Forum and we got so much information from being part of that group, and that flexibility that we've all gotten around so many parts of our lives is going to be really critical to inform our spaces going forward.
And for sure, you know, I always say this, no matter what, everyone is different, and certainly no one size fits all at all, ever. Yeah. But what's so great about it is the world needs the design community to get them there. The whole design community, the designers, the architects, the manufacturing, the product, all of it is it's going to keep changing, and that's what's exciting.
Totally agree.
How do you make the hard decisions? Like for you, what allows you to make the hard decisions? How do you have the courage to make the hard decisions about you? How do you do that?
How do I make the hard decisions? I listen a lot, Cindy, and I surround myself with people that are different and smarter and have lots of ideas. And so I ask a lot of questions. I'm annoyingly like a toddler in that way. Really? I ask why 107 times a day. And I think that mindset, I'm a naturally curious person. I consider a lot of different things. So when it comes time to make a hard decision, and I think we've all had to make a lot more of them in the last few years, that mindset of really trying to be curious and trying to understand a variety of viewpoints helps kind of guide my internal compass, right? And I think that's important. And the other side is you have to know yourself, and you have to know the values of the organization you represent and your own values. And I think that integrity and that commitment to purpose and values keeps me very grounded in what to do, because sometimes, well, many times the right thing is not the easy thing.
Right.
But we know what it is. And so I think that combination of those things really helps me, well, in life and at work.
Right. Do you think that there's, you know, do you think there's something about you that you left something very successful? The timing of going to Herman Miller at the time to making big changes in a time where the world is making big changes.
Yeah.
I mean, do you reflect on that?
I do. I mean, I think when you go through life, listen, I'm at the age and the stage where I can make choices. Yeah. But when I left my last career and I jumped and I said, I'm going to go to graduate school and I'm going to say no to jobs for a year and I'm just going to see what happens, that's really scary. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's really liberating. And I think when you live through making difficult decisions like that for yourself, and you come out the other side to a whole new world with a whole lot of experiences, it gives you the confidence, and it also gives you the courage to try new things. And I think in the design community, we're trying new things and innovating every day and failing. I fail miserably all the time, every day, in many ways. And I think that gives me the courage and confidence to make hard decisions, because I know at the other side of it will be better.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's just great advice for people to live by. There's so many people right now in the world that are making changes in their lives. And yes, you're just a wonderful example of, you know, of strength and courage, and as you say, making tough decisions to try to move things forward in the best possible light, really, for all of our futures, right?
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think actually this time has really made people reflect a lot more on life and what they want in life and make those hard decisions. So
yeah. Well, listen, I know we could talk for another couple hours.
We could. You're so much fun to talk to.
I know you're so good. And I know the design community is like embracing the change and super excited about what's coming next. And if you want to share like a final thought about anything as I see the light going down in my neighborhood right now, something about the light ahead.
Thank you, Cindy. We're so excited about sort of the joining of these two amazing modern design companies in the future here. We have a great group of people, and we will continue to work closely with all of our design partners, and we welcome that feedback. We welcome that interaction, because we think that gives us strength and helps us move into the future. So we couldn't be more excited about the future ahead, and being able to rely on the strengths and talents out there in the community. And it has been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, for me too. By the way, we always say at Interior Design, we say we're unapologetically modern. And now you have two modern forces together with Miller Knoll. And I really am sincerely excited about what's ahead. And I want to thank you, Andy Owen, for being so generous with your time and your thoughts and your honesty about the company.
Thank you, Cindy. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you.
The design community in and around New York is like no other in the world. A great confluence of talent and taste, creativity and craft, professionals at the height of their game, breaking new ground and setting standards for the industry to follow. While the past 2 years have been rough going, design in New York has never stopped innovating. That's why Luxe Interiors Design created In a New York State of Design, a celebration of resilience and a look to the future. Even the mayor of New York saluted this Luxe initiative. But don't just take my word for it. We asked our State of Design talents to share their reasons why New York design is so iconic. And here's what they had to say.
For me, it's inspiration and ingenuity. New York design is the fascinating result of global design inspiration filtered through this fascinating lens.
New York design means to me bold, fresh, innovative.
NY design means variety. There are countless visuals to see throughout.
New York has it all. It's truly an amazing place.
New York design is the best because it's inspired by local and global influences.
New York has everything.
New York is the epicenter for art, design, and architecture. It has been, it is today, and it will be tomorrow.
We recently introduced Hudson Check, a window pane plaid mosaic, and I said, this is just like New York. Something fascinating is going on every time you turn a corner.
New York is such a unique combination of all the people that make it up, and our floors are the same way, from designers, their clients, and all of our incredible craftsmen.
Inclusive, forward-thinking, vibrant.
It's very tight-knit. We all know each other's work, and I think there's a lot of camaraderie.
Super flexible, super knowledgeable.
Determined, fierce, young, and fresh.
The cloisters are this incredible Gothic structure, now part of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. You really feel like you are an incredible destination with the backdrop of the Palisades beyond.
For sure, the Rockefeller Center is grand, majestic, and it's like a city in the city.
The Statue of Liberty. To me, it's the symbol of what New York is all about, opening arms to everyone.
Nate Berkus, because when I was a little boy, I saw Nate Berkus on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and that made me fall in love with interior design.
My biggest inspiration would be my mom, Victoria McMillan.
I really like to bring that live workplace spirit into our design projects. And part of that is the magic of New York. I really believe in architecture as a backdrop for living and interiors as an inspiration for lifestyle.
With a showroom in the A&D building at the White Hot Center of Luxury Design, our flagship showroom in the Flatiron, New York's Creative Center, and our slab gallery just across the Hudson River, our commitment could not be stronger or more central to everything about us.
My favorite design moment, for sure, in New York has been at the kickoff event at our flagship store in Soho, at the Architectural and Design Film Festival.
My absolute favorite New York City design experience is walking down the streets of my neighborhood in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, seeing the old historical gas lamps and experiencing all the late 1800s townhomes and their beautiful brown stone facades.
The secret is that there is no secret. You have to work hard and it pays off.
Taking inspiration from all that this city has to offer, bringing your own ingenuity to the project, and presenting it with integrity.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Metropolis Think Tank Thursdays. Today, we're going to be talking about designing workplaces for the human experience with Huntsman Architectural Group. Hosting an event like this requires the support of great firms like Huntsman Architectural Group and our incredible sponsors. We'd like to thank CertainTeed, show-stopping ceilings and walls that achieve the extraordinary for every space and every budget. And Growy, designing and engineering innovative water products for bathroom solutions and kitchen fittings. And now I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Metropolis's executive editor Sam Lubell.
Thank you so much, Tina, and thanks to Huntsman Architectural Group, and thanks to our sponsors, CertainTeed and Growy, for making this possible. Really a pleasure to have what I think is a great panel and a really good topic. I think it's going to be a fun conversation. The topic is one that's definitely on all of our minds right now. It's not just designing workplaces, and it's not just how do we get people to come back to the office or what do they do. It's how do we design for the people coming back? How do we design for humans? Which that kind of concept, I think, gets lost in the shuffle all too often. We are indeed all human, and we have to design for that fact. And I think this discussion and this group are perfect people to talk about that kind of concept within Uber's new global headquarters, which is in San Francisco's Mission Bay, and really more than just a beautiful office, which it is, but really it's a place that thinks about the human, thinks about instilling wellness, thinks about personal choices, thinks about sustainability and just happiness. These are all things that I think are all in people's minds, especially as we come back to the office and sort of rethink what the office can be. So the panelists are Tracy Kelly, who's Director of Corporate Real Estate and Workplace at the HQ Bay Area at Uber. Haki Chang, Lead AP, who's Principal at RMW. And Allison Wolf, Lead AP, Associate Principal at Huntsman Architectural Group. And once again, really a pleasure to have all of you there. I think we're all over the world, actually, which is kind of fun. But not just the guests are from all over the world, but I'm actually in Berlin, believe it or not. And I know that Tina is in New York, Kelly is in Florida, and I think most of the guests are in California. So that's pretty good. So that's the power of technology right there. And speaking of the power of technology, Uber I don't have to remind you that it's one of the best examples of the power of technology to change things. to disrupt, in their case, the whole transportation sector. I think it's interesting that with this office that we're going to talk about, I think they're in a lot of ways, they're interested in disrupting office design. And I think for the better. I think, people really need to pay attention as people come back to what people want, because they're used to being at home. And they in a lot of cases, I think, people aren't quite, excited to go back unless there's something there for them that is really going to be valuable. And I think giving them a real human experience is about as valuable as you can get. So Tracy, let me ask you the first question. Since obviously all employees have been we're gone for a while, obviously, and then kind of trickling back, and we're all figuring that out. But as that happens, how have your employees' needs in terms of what they're looking for in an office changed in the last couple of years? And do you think you guys are doing a better job responding to those needs now? Do you think that you've got a little bit more honed in to what they need?
Yeah, it's a great question. In the last few years, we've been really just keeping up with our headcount. We've just been keeping up with the massive growth. And for us, a lot of times that looked like, just paint and carpet and getting some folks in as fast as we could, just because we were exploding all over the globe. And during that time, we were able to really gather a lot of feedback: what works, what doesn't, how teams really work. In the Bay Area, you're always looking at what the Joneses have in terms of amenities, and do we want to include all of those, and what is going to be used and what's not. And so, just luckily, we had a lot of research going into planning the campus that I think is really applicable now. And so, we probably didn't nail every single thing, but we're coming back to a campus that provides a lot more access to open space, to natural light, to safety features above and beyond code. So I think in a lot of ways, we did a good amount of planning by listening to our employees, and then really wanting to strive for as much wellness as we could include in this campus as well, which is now, more appropriate than ever, really.
Right. And you mentioned listening. How does that, we were talking just before this about how Uber is sort of exploding size-wise. So how does that take place? How can you listen to what your employees need, especially when they're all over the place, mostly remote?
It's not easy. We are blessed with a very vocal population. And so we get a lot of real-time feedback in all of our locations. And, a lot of times it's job specific about the job type, and the type of work they're doing. Sometimes it's cultural about specifically what works in a life balance type of way. There's always a lot of surveys out there if you can get folks to answer those, but some of it's honestly observational and casual conversations while you're in the office and while you're on calls, and just asking the question, what's working for you now, and what do you think is going to work for you when you come back?
Right. And do you think it's kind of helping? I don't know if there's like a mandate, or or you're sort of in a way kind of luring them back. I always have that picture. It's really, come on.
We have like a little carrot that we've been dangling, and
that works. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. What's kind of great so far is we've been open for volunteers in Mission Bay since March. So we've had several months of employees coming in and actually getting to use the facility in sort of a casual way. They're not assigned to a desk. There's no days specific that they can come. There's no hours. They can come for an hour if they want. And so it's been really great to hear feedback. And it's a brand new space too, which is always really exciting to come back to. So we are not in a mandated return to work timeframe right now. We're still volunteer. I know our company and our culture really wants us to be together, and really wants to have that in-person collaboration where it's appropriate. But, we're figuring it out just like everybody else. We're figuring out what hybrid looks like, and what remote work looks like, and how we still keep our teams connected. And, all of that relates specifically back to how we use space and how much of it we need. And I don't think anybody really has that answer 100% just yet, but it's a really exciting time that we're all gathering data, in this sort of shared experiment.
Right. Well, we are all sort of test cases for ourselves in a way, or kind of as we go along. But I think a big part of that is designers. And Aki, I wanted to ask you about designers. Certainly are very well attuned to changes in not just workplace, but in our residences throughout the pandemic. People looking for more space, more light, and I think they're doing the same in the workplace. And I think in a lot of ways, because we're spending so much time in both, there seems to be a blending of work and home. Homes are incorporating more office features. Offices are incorporating more home features, and you can feel more comfortable in both. So do you see that? Like, what aspects of each are sort of blurring into the other for you?
You're absolutely right. There is a blurring between your home and office, and we're all still living through that. But I think the key aspect of home that we often forget is that we sort of incorporated within the office the idea of creating a sense of belonging, and along with the comforts that one finds at home, what we call home also extends to our local urban neighborhoods, which may mean your favorite, pop-up shop, a little quiet library on the corner, a fitness spot, a little-known shortcut path with a view, along the way, or simple things like a place to, park under a tree, or a garden to grow and pick your basil, which you actually can do in and of course, who can't forget a coffee shop with a barista that knows how you like your vanilla latte. Meaningful home touch points that we focus on and develop, into sort of the office journey for each person. And I think these urban points of connection that we experience every single day, within our home, sort of inner circle radius. And we've managed to integrate into the workplace.
That's a great point. I think when I think about home spilling into the office, I just think about inside your home, but the neighborhood is a huge part of when you're working from home. And so maybe you can talk a little bit more about how you sort of created these neighborhoods within the Uber offices.
Well, it's a extreme collaborative effort. I think, a large part, really started from what Tracy mentioned before, and getting the information from people that's working and living in the space. And we didn't start from scratch. We started from a very robust set of data and to really understand what it really means to be a neighborhood, and how many people really could be within a neighborhood, and how does a neighborhood connect to other neighborhoods to form a community. And through that, I think there's certain programs that Tracy and her team sort of push us to come up with. For instance, the front porch idea, having something of a key connector, between neighborhoods as you first enter, and also as a gathering place when you are meeting with your coworkers.
Yeah, I think that front porch, that kind of drama that brings, it goes a long way too, and that sort of connection for everybody. I think people obviously want to come back to the office to get some sort of connection that we're all missing, and that's a huge part of it. And this space certainly seems to do that in droves. Allison, I think I wanted to ask you a little bit about sort of a little bit more of just the general theme here is that I think for a long time in the workplace, there was this idea of offering amenities, like if anything from, a gym to, games to play or, beer at the office, something like that, but now I think there seems to be a shift towards not sort of, yes, still amenities, but really this human-centered vision, which is more about kind of more like deeper parts of us. So more like wellness, obviously, is a huge part of that. That's something that we're all very in touch with now. I think now since we've been through this sort of trauma together, and connection, and these are things that are like basic human things, and I think that that's one thing about the design that I've noticed of Uber's offices is that I would say human first more than anything, which I think is a big shift. So can you talk a little bit about what that means to you, sort of human-centered, to make something human-centered?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I think in terms of amenities, amenities are still important, right? But the shift is really in thinking about what those amenities are. Now we're really thinking about what are the essential elements that the employees need. We're thinking about they need to feel welcome, they need to feel supported, they need to be comfortable, and ultimately to feel inspired. So I think it's thinking of kind of going back to the essential elements and thinking what brings employees happiness, what will bring them back to the office. And we actually had it easy with Uber because for them, it was always all about the employees. We actually started with this pyramid where employees were at the top, and we were talking about different design directives, and it was always back to the people. And so I think they were really forward thinking as well. Now we're coming back from the pandemic, and that was now it's like you said, more important than ever. One of my favorite moments is just their wellness centers. So a lot of companies have gyms and so forth, but Uber wanted to have a wellness center. So in developing that, we went up to the 8th floor where this was planning to be, and it overlooks this terrace. They have really gigantic terraces, which is perfect nowadays, what everybody really wants. And I realized that we'll look down on this space and it almost feels like you're in a treehouse. And so we created, this wellness center that incorporates this one space that we have these hanging swings and that feel almost like nests. And you sit in there and you feel, weightless in a way. And so I think just having experiences like that are really what the amenities are tilting to now. It's really about the experience. I know if I was to leave a hectic meeting, like that's where I would head for sure.
I think that's a really good word to use, is sort of differentiating between amenity and sort of needs and wellness. Kind of is this idea of experience, and that's something we're all. I like to think we're all valuing that more than we used to, which is a good thing for sure. And it's, I think, hard to have sometimes special experiences if you're at your home every day. So I think, but I do think there's a lot of pressure to create that in offices. And maybe you can all feel free to jump in on this, but talk about other ways to sort of create that like kind of special experience. I know that, you mentioned balconies, we mentioned, the grand arrivals, we mentioned neighborhoods, also artworks in this office. There's, cut throughs that open up the space. What are some of the other ways that you are kind of creating that sort of special experience?
I think that, the overall structure of the design and the layout was really made to be a welcoming and collaborative environment. So even walking into the different lobbies, they're all very unique in some way, but they all are, one is kind of the main arrival center, but the other buildings, one has a coffee shop and a lot of really comfortable lounge seating. Another one has like a little kind of coffee bar pit stop, and some really beautiful kind of artwork, architectural artwork. So I think,
I like that.
Yeah, so they're just, I think welcoming into the space, and then also even in our buildings, there, in MB3 and MB4, where the buildings are a little bit more traditional. You go up through an elevator, and you end up on the floor. It's not like the shop buildings that are a little bit more interesting in their approach. but we made sure that as soon as you step out of the elevators, you are in a gathering space, you're in a collaborative space. And so I think just those are just essential kind of elements there, make the space feel a lot more welcoming in general.
Right. And Hockey, I think you were about to weigh in, so I'm going to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, we collaborated quite a bit, and all fronts. But one of my favorite meetings that we had was, the sort of the equity, and what I mean by that is to really, Tracy and team was pushing us to say, okay, we want to make sure that through 4 buildings, through this many amount of workplaces, from 7 stories to 11 stories for each building. Want to make sure there's no space or place that feels overweighted with amenities. Like this is the center of it all. So one of the things that we've done was to create a vertical map or a sort of a stacking map that shows exactly where the amenities are. And it's a very colorful map because each amenity has a designated color. And you can easily tell from that map, how well everything is spread and how well everything is distributed, to making sure that the wellness room that Allison spoke of is at every floor, every other floor. And from there on, we started to think about, well, what are sort of destination points and iconic points, that people gravitate to, and making sure that it is equally weighted, through the campus, to for the people that within those buildings, but also for people to make sure they go to other buildings, for those attractions.
Tracy, obviously, when you guys are welcoming people back to the office, there's, what I was saying before, what does the office offer that being at home doesn't? And obviously, number one is, collaboration, being together with people. I guess there's so many different ways that you can do that, collaborating. And I'm sure that was always on your mind. I mean, there's small little groups. There's, I don't know if I'm assuming there's a really, really large space. But I'm curious about how you strategize for all the myriad ways that people can collaborate, because there's probably more than I could ever think of.
Yeah, you're right. We do. That is what is bringing people back right now. It's that face-to-face time. It's almost like a social time. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And there's a lot that you miss in body language and quick conversations where you turn to your neighbor and you ask a question that you didn't have to schedule a meeting for. There's a lot of value in that, in that relationship building that happens in person. And so, yes, there's a lot of formal collaboration spaces, team rooms, meeting rooms, large, summit spaces. But what I think is really successful that both design teams, actually all 3 design teams built into the project is choice. There is a lot of choice for collaboration that's not bookable, that's spontaneous, that's let's grab a booth, in the cafe, or let's go into the atrium and, talk around on a terrace or do a walking one-on-one. There's a lot more opportunity for you to have less noise, or to, have that sort of really active, pinup, vibrant space. And I think that's really important right now, that one size just doesn't fit all anymore. And it's important to really be mindful of how inclusive your spaces are, in terms of there's a lot of different working styles and a lot of different collaboration styles. And, if you can offer a variety of opportunities for people to connect, then, you're really adding value to the overall day.
And I think another question I have, and this is even more specific for a technology company, which is there's got to be a lot of pressure to incorporate more and more technology into the workplace. And I think, for good reason, for obviously you want to be on the cutting edge if you're a technology company and you want to test things and you want to be able to, look through data, and you want to be able to communicate to people that aren't there. But I guess there's this balance between having this like amazing array of technology and then going back to what we're saying before about peace and wellness. And so I am curious about how you sort of balance those two poles into one space.
So I think there were designated areas that we had a lot of technology. I think, one of the lobbies feels very kind of digitized and even has digitized art and so forth, which is pretty interesting. And then there are other places that are there's essentially, not much technology at all. Like a lot of the wellness areas, the libraries, which are these kind of quiet heads down spaces. They're really, much more about, maybe you have your laptop, but otherwise, no cell phones or anything. And then I think we were also just very, very careful about how we integrated technology as far as AV and conferencing and all of that, because it's important that you get that right. And, we have multiple different scenarios, from team rooms and multi-purpose rooms, all the way down to phone rooms. And so kind of looking at each of those specifically and working with the AV teams and making sure that those are, are well thought out.
And can you architecturally, and maybe Haki, I can ask you about this, sort of also work on ways to soften a space? I think of a lot of tech spaces now, like when tech spaces first started, for lack of a better way to put this, they seem like they were built for males, and they were mostly males working, unfortunately, at that time. And, not the best design sense and not the warmest feeling always. And I feel like they now have a much more sophisticated sense of design, much softer kind of feeling. And they're, to be frank, we're talking about equity. They seem to be taking more and more types of people into account, which is a wonderful thing. And I think any design that's good design can do that, or needs to do that. So yeah, I mean, in addition to spatial solutions and embedded technology, like, I guess there's that aspect of softening just through, taking everybody into account.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, it's not just designing for a single person, and I think some companies reflected that, especially when there's a very young company trying to grow. But I think with Uber, it's really taking account of the diversity that's inherent to the tourist population. And I think not only within Uber itself, but I think it's a reflection of the city environment and how there needs to be access that is equal for everybody. And I think that's one of the key things that we try to manage throughout. And I think so it's not necessarily a stylistic softening of or a decor. I think that definitely has to play a large part in it. But I think it's more of making sure that none of the spaces are someone's club, that they are trespassing, and that all the spaces can be sort of access at any given time.
No, that's a really good point. It's more organic and kind of a whole thought, and it's not like you add a couple of soft colors and you're good to go. Like, you have to really think about it in a really holistic way.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, I don't think we set out to be very dogmatic and say, okay, this is a area where 4 people can have a sip of coffee only. It's not that. It's not a single purpose. It's always thinking of how do we get people to just simply connect and let people bring themselves into the space and make it their own. We sort of provided a background, the tools, the the materials and, making sure everything is convenient to them. But, at the end of the day, it's really how, the group and the team uses it.
I think another way that we used technology to really bring people in is we have, I think bleachers have become something that you see fairly often in architecture now, but because two of the buildings are centered around a plaza for the Warriors' new Chase Arena, and there's a lot happening on that plaza. So we really wanted the space to specifically interact with that plaza. And so we have bleachers inside that opened up 2 levels of the space. And, it allows, Uber employees and so forth on the inside to really be part of that and feel a part of what's happening on the plaza. And it faces out and it's a great gathering spot for them. But on the flip side of that, we put this big digital display on the ceiling. And what that does is it also invites people out on the plaza to kind of look inside and feel, more a part. So it was a way to kind of open up in a way to the community and have that, interaction back and forth. So I think, kind of in thinking about, bringing people together and maximizing the space, that was a key detail there.
That's an interesting point, which is, and I think maybe that's where offices are in some respects going more and more, which is, okay, so we went from home where we had only a virtual community and we're like, okay, we're going to the office where we can actually build our community again. But, can we expand that community? And you're talking about, the plaza and the people at the stadium. And are you starting to think about that in general with offices? Is how are we going to connect to, the neighborhood or the city at large? How do you do that a little?
Definitely. And, I think that's tough to do because, you can't just kind of have a completely open campus, right?
Right.
But there are ways that, with Uber having 4 buildings, there's the spaces that kind of are intercommunicating between all 4 buildings. And there's a lot of public spaces in between them. They're also, right on the main transportation line for Muni. We're hoping there will be a new ferry terminal going in next door. So I think just opening it up and making it accessible and everything and making it the location be in a place that, is open and is really part of the city was super important for Uber, of course. Sorry, Tracy, I feel like I'm speaking for you.
Well, no, Tracy, okay. I imagine, Tracy, that's a big part. I mean, tech companies, to be fair, have gotten some blowback in some communities because, for sometimes fairly, sometimes not. And, obviously, there's a really important piece that you really do want to connect with the community. And there's this creation at Uber. I know there are some public spaces that the public can use. I know Amazon in Seattle, I've been to their spaces and they have some very large public spaces that people can share. And I think there is sort of this sense I'm getting that tech companies are really feeling they want to, that it's important for them to start giving back to the community. Not that they haven't in the past, but to maybe do it more explicitly. So, Tracy, I imagine that's part of your strategy as you grow as a company, even beyond this.
Yeah, I can't speak for all tech companies in the Bay Area, but for us, it was a strategic choice.
I think that would be a good, yeah.
Right. And we have our fair share of blowback, but it was a strategic decision to place ourselves right in the hub of things, in between 2 ballparks and major transportation lines. And also it's a commitment to the city, where we grew up, and not moving our headquarters necessarily somewhere else. I mean, I can't say for the future what that looks like, but that's that was a driving factor in putting us all under one campus roof, rather than sort of spread out all through the city. And, there are a lot of features that, kind of are unspoken out there, like a new park that we put in, public artwork. We have a public terrace, and, there are, as much as possible, we are a private company, but as much as possible, wanting to connect to the community that we live in more than just, you know, the location, being able to, you know, go to the restaurants, take part in Chase events, you know, partner with other projects in the area. We have a completely non-employee based childcare center that we built that's for the community. So, you know, as much as possible, it wasn't an initiative in this campus is to make sure that there was a connection there. And, you know, I think that's important.
That's great to hear. Yeah, it's certainly, these are trends, wellness, human-centered, reaching out to the community. These are very encouraging trends. But it's hard to predict. I mean, that's another thing about offices. I mean, it's right now, it's about anything that we design, is that the one thing we know is that we don't know what's next. And I mean, we certainly learned that from the pandemic, and we keep learning that in offices. They're certainly changing quickly. But, you know, I was in a cubicle when I started, and then, you know, obviously we were all touting the open office for a while, and then there was some that word blow back again to the open office, and then obviously COVID came and everything got turned upside down. And so it's the one thing we know is we have to sort of think about what's next, even when we're designing. So I think I'm curious about how you do that, how you think about, okay, is this going to be, this particular space going to be flexible enough to change as times change, because they seem to change quicker than ever. And what are sort of some of the things that you've incorporated or at least thought about to be able to do that?
Well, I'll start. I think that, first of all, I think open office is still actually going to be very important, because when people come to the office, they need a space that they can, you know, work, but also collaborate. It's, you know, important to be able to just raise your voice or, you know, look across the aisle and say, can you help with this? Or what do you think about this? Or whatever. And so
as long as they can make a phone call somewhere else and then come back, maybe.
Well, that's the trade-off, right? That I think that what we need to be sure of is, I think the biggest probably problem right now that people are facing when they're coming back to the office is that there's these acoustic issues, because everyone's, you know, on VC, you know, everyone's on calls. So, you know, balancing that with spaces to go, you know, whether it's a phone room or a library, or, you know, if you need to be just heads down, or if you need to make a call and you know, want to be considerate of your coworkers, then, you know, you need a place to go. And I think the one thing that was really good, you know, looking back on the design for Uber, is we increased their conference room counts considerably. And so, they took a lot of, you know, data and really thought about what size conference rooms are used and so forth. And so a lot of phone rooms and smaller size conference rooms were built. And so I think that will, you know, help mitigate that a little bit. But looking forward, I think that it's really not going to be a one size fits all. I think it's going to, we really just need to listen to our clients. I think everybody's going to come back differently. There's a few different projects I'm working on right now, and you know, they're all taking very different approaches to coming back to the office. And so I think, you know, yeah, time will tell.
Right. But for flexibility, it seems like having that sort of variety of spaces seems like a really good bet. It's sort of like when businesses try to not put all their eggs in one basket, but kind of diversify. It's like, okay, we're going to see how these all work, and maybe one will, you know, will be more. It's almost like they're different labs in a way, and that seems to me like it might be one good way to have flexibility.
I think that's a great point, because you know, when I look back at Uber, we started 4 or 5 years ago, and asking, you know, the questions of, you know, what does the, you know, Uber workplace look like, you know, 4 or 5 years from now. You know, the metric of what we were looking at wasn't just how many people can we fit, you know, in an assigned desk. You know, it was more of, you know, how many people can be here, but we know people are going to move around. We know people are going to already work from home, and they're already doing that, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. But it's just more pervasive now and normal now. But yeah, I think the metric of really understanding, the variety of work points is not just workstations, conference rooms, but everything, a dozen or more of spaces you can work at, in between that. And those were programmed, delicately and sensitively within the space. And it's funny, what we're looking at with other projects now is exactly, those metrics that we're also sort of leaning toward. Is that, we're talking about now workstations, but we're talking about work points. And that's a completely different conversation. I think that's a very welcoming way, to make an office space, a lot more humane.
Yeah, as to say, having that variety sounds fantastic. Having worked in my same desk in my house for, now for, I can't count how long, having variety sounds wonderful. Having choices, I think that goes a long way for sure. And Tracy, that's something people have been responsive to. They've been enjoying being able to kind of, pick your day essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice to not have that restriction. And I'm not sure if that's always going to be the case. At some point you want to be there at the same time as the rest of your teammates. Right. And so we are trying to support that action now and kind of get that behavior started where you're having like team days where you all, maybe rope off an area of the cafe and eat lunch together, and that you're all in the office on the same day and you're able to connect in person. And I think those types of, it's more one-to-one support rather than just designing a space and letting you figure out how to use it. We're really sort of investing in not only building these spaces, but then walking you through like, what is your need? Because there's probably something there that's going to help you with that, get to your end goal. And so we've got, some great programs in place that you can get that support. And I think that goes hand in hand with the design. It's one thing to build it. It's another thing to use it efficiently. And to be able to, maximize behavior and functionality within the space as you continue to grow. I don't always think the answer is like, let's, throw the baby out with the bathwater and refigure out the whole thing. I think there's a lot of good baked in there, and it's a matter of understanding really what do you want your outcome to be, because I think we can get there together. So, I think choice is really important.
And I think your point about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I always get that metaphor wrong.
I know. I was so proud I got that without messing it up.
Yes. Like, what are we doing with bathwater? Anyway, the idea of, you make this major investment, but you don't necessarily, there's this trend a lot of times in tech companies I've noticed, and other companies, like 5 years later, it's just completely different, let's start from scratch. And first of all, sustainability wise, that's not a good option. And maybe money wise, it's not a good option. It's like, can you make tweaks, or how do you shift this? And, and as I said, kind of use it as a lab to see what works and what doesn't. This actually dovetails with the question one of the the viewers Sherry asked, will Uber be implementing a post-occupancy employee survey to gain feedback on the user experience? Which seems to me like that, that's one possible way of kind of how do you tweak it?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be doing that in the formal way with sensors and utilization, move surveys. We have several programs in place. We call them space captains, which are embedded in each team that sort of have autonomy to make choice in their neighborhood. And then, there's a lot of sort of train the trainer action going on. And so we're getting that real-time feedback from, we're at about 750 people coming in on average right now, which is not a huge amount in terms of our total population, but it's enough to get good feedback. And let me tell you, that Slack channel blows up every day, asking for things and asking for questions. And we have such an amazing, hospitality driven facilities team that answers those questions within, 15 minutes. Where can I find this? I need a Tide pen, the printer's not working. I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. And so I think that's really the change management part of the experience is so important, and now more than ever, and getting to that end goal rather than, having people figure it out on their own.
Right. It sounds like you were really ready for that, because I don't think everybody is when they have a new office. It sounds like you were prepared to really manage that.
Yeah, well, we got a little extra time to work on it. So so we started the change management process at least early enough. And then, the pandemic in some ways had some silver linings in terms of learnings and extra time to think through your daily journey through the space and what your experience would be, and what we thought the introductory experience might look like, and then figuring out what the future experience, potentially could be based on what we know in the past, and, everyone's non-existent crystal ball that we wish we had. But yeah, I think there's a lot of still relevant information. It's not all new.
Right. What do you call it? Space? What are they?
Space captains.
Yeah, I've been called that before too.
That's space captain.
Yeah, just or spacey. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love hearing that. I mean, that sounds like an amazing thing to have in a new office. And I think that kind of getting that kind of feedback, Allison and Haki, I'm curious, as designers, when you are, working on this many different types of spaces, do you kind of try to make an effort to get post-occupancy or get some sort of feedback so you can incorporate that? How are you able to do that to really kind of learn from your projects?
It's difficult, and to be completely candid, I feel like we need to do more of it. I think that it's tough as architects to take the time, essentially, that is typically not part of your fees or anything like that,
right
and go back. But it's so important, and a group of us were just talking about that earlier today, that to circle back and see how you've done in a way, because all of that feedback can be so important moving forward. So yeah,
right.
I think it's a difficult thing to do. It's hard to do it routinely, but I think that, yeah, it's something we really, really need to do more of.
Right. No, I get it. I mean, after we've put out an issue, I don't want to look back after you said you put so much into it, you kind of want to move on. So I get it, and I do get the importance of it. You can learn so much. And Haki, has that been your experience too, or what is your?
No, absolutely true. I think, we definitely should be doing more of that. I think, a lot of times, we definitely request, it to be done and to be part of our design process. I think, unfortunately, for a good number of clients, it's almost like they don't want to hear the news. They don't want to. It's better, set on mute. So, but I think more and more, I see more and more people, companies, are starting to understand that this is very, very important. We gotta hear the people, and we gotta make sure that the design is not just frozen in place. Once it's occupied, but how do we allow it to evolve?
Right. Well, maybe that's another growth area. Uber, you can come up with some good post-occupancy survey software for people, and then there you go.
I think it is out there. There's a lot of good software out there, but this design team was so amazing, and we had such a great time working on the project that you guys are always welcome to come and work and observe anytime you want.
We'd love to. We'll take you up on that, Tracy.
Speaking of the brand of Uber, because I think that's another part of designing an office, especially one that's your kind of global headquarters, and you're trying to set a tone for a very, large and growing company, is how do you embed sort of not, sort of your brand, your visual brand, but also the goals that you're trying to set into the design, without it being sort of over the top. I always think of what's the show, Silicon Valley, like the weird, the competitors' offices with those weird kind of cartoonish. You don't want that, but how do you embed that sort of the visual and sort of feeling of the brand, but also the goals of the brand into what you're designing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and not an easy thing to do without it being super overt and just plastering your name everywhere.
Right.
And, we really wanted to have more of a sophisticated approach to the campus, a little bit more of a grown up, palette and ideas, and really focus much more on diversity, inclusion, wellness than on sort of, beer and ping pong tables. Not that those are bad, and we have those, but, just to really not have that be the central core.
Yeah.
And our brand team has for several years been really engaged in physical space, because we have a lot of physical space out there. We have driver partner centers around the globe and offices. And so they've done a really good job translating the brand into, I would think, and maybe Allison and Hucky don't agree with me, but digestible chunks of information that are easily translatable through the environmental graphics, or through sort of, simple gestures in the space. We use our font everywhere. I think that you definitely want your ethos and your central mission to be reflected in the space. And, you want it to reflect the work that goes on there, and you want to be able to celebrate that work in the physical space, whether that's pinups or displays or any kind of visual, technology that you might embed. But it's very important for other teams to see what you're working on, because it's easy to get siloed in your own work, even in a company. And so I think design wise, we really thought about like, okay, well, how can we keep, how can we keep it neat and tidy, but also, organize chaos in the space too, so that people feel like it's their second home. And I think both firms did a really great job of exploring ideas that sort of celebrate both our brand, the mission, and some of the core values we wanted to see reflected in the space.
What were some of your secrets? How did you guys do that?
So first of all, I agree with Tracy. They have a wonderful branding team. Everything is very kind of clear and concise and very nicely designed. So, all of the graphics and everything that went into it, had a lot of good, strong directives. And then definitely having spaces for people to be creative and allow for kind of team postings, like the front porch and a number of different areas on the floors where you can have pinup space and so forth, and ways to communicate with each other in different teams. And even parts of the collaboration spaces that can be completely, reworked or added to or personalized in different ways, I think is really important. But then, just at a larger scale, I think, the way you do that by, capturing a brand and the essence of a company, without plastering their name everywhere, which I think, Uber thankfully didn't want. And I feel like that's becoming less and less of a thing, hopefully, is really, listening to who this company is and really getting to understand their culture and making sure that the space represents them, from the moment you walk in, not just in their colors and branding and logo, but just in the feel of the general culture of the space. And I think you can do a lot with that. So I think that's really where it's at.
Yeah, culture is a big deal, and that's not an easy thing to set. But Haki, what are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, there's no secret sauce. I think it's definitely what we didn't want, and thankfully, Uber and Tracy, her team, agreed that we didn't want mission statements plastered everywhere or performance goals as a measuring stick of brand connection. I think what we came in just from the get-go understanding that people are savvy enough, that they know the purpose of working at Uber, and they already know what's driving them. So our charge was simply to make sure that the space that was designed and created is respectful of sort of that their investment of that purpose at Uber, and they can see that the company is also investing in them by providing a great place to work at.
Right, and we're talking so much about the design and how it relates to the employees, and I think there are other things that employees want as we evolve as a working society. And one thing is, and we just had a panel on this, last week, is talking about new generations coming in and they have new demands. And I think some of what we were talking about, some of the very youngest employees coming in, they really have strong opinions about, well, a lot of things, but in a lot of good ways, about social justice, about sustainability. And I want to know how do you address things like that in your design? That's not something; those are not things that were, I think, even a few years ago, probably standard things to talk about in an office design. But I think now you have to. So, what were some of those? I guess I'd call it do good, save the world, be a better designer, be a better company. What are some of the best standout elements in this project?
Well, I think, there was a major initiative to get LEED certified. So, the sustainability aspect of the company was there. So that was already part of the culture. So we could, and it's already part of what, Huntsman does with every project as well, is just being very careful about what we specify. And not just, that we want to avoid certain chemicals and so forth, but we're also specifying locally as much as possible. And I feel like that's something that's just increasing. We're doing that more and more. The whole shipping thing that's happening is also making putting more pressure to source locally, which is a great thing, right? So I think that as far as the sustainability and health and the wellness initiatives, I think that that's something that I feel like there's been this arc where it was pretty early on in my career when people were just talking about that, and now I feel like it's been predominant and more predominant, and thank goodness. And now it's, like you said, it's starting to encompass more things like equity and so forth.
Yeah, I think we're transitioning from, I want to go back to the beginning of my career, but a lot of these sustainable efforts or wellness efforts, it was very reactionary. It was only done when the client demanded it. But I think as design has progressed, as the industry has progressed, it's becoming more baked into what the firms do. And that we want to make sure that everyone gets plenty of daylight and views and just and temperature comfort, but at the same time making sure that things are not just catered to one single person, but it's accommodated for many. So it gets, we're not there yet. We're not definitely not at a point where I think we can safely say, we're doing the best for the environment, but we are inching closer every single, project. And I think, part of that is really recognizing what the resilient design principles are and making sure that, we're reminding ourselves, reminding our team, we're reminding our client needed to drive that forward.
Tracy, is that something that Uber, does that dovetail with overall environmental sustainability kind of guidelines for the company within the buildings? And because obviously I think, you need to work on that with the cars and with everything else that you're working with. Is there sort of an overarching thing that the office and the buildings that you run fall under?
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of even the company's initiatives, carbon neutral initiatives and other, environmental specific, all four buildings achieved WELL certification, gold or platinum, which we're really proud of. And WELL has factors that reach far more than just products, and it goes into your food programs and your air quality. And I think, we have taken those same principles and applied them globally now to all of our talent hubs. And we have an investment that we're making even in countries where it's not a code, it's not a requirement, but we as a company feel that it is it's important for employees to work in a healthy environment. So yes, we are adopting those same principles, whether we achieve a WELL certification or BREEAM or otherwise in other countries. It's been good to go through this process here. So we understand what that investment really looks like, and that we've made that commitment to that.
But while I have everybody, I want to get a little bit of a shout out for Metropolis. Recently, we had the Interior Design Pledge for Positive Impact. We developed it with the ASID, IIDA, IDC together with Metropolis. And it's for all interior design professionals. If they want to make a positive impact, they can check out the pledge on our website. And it's a great place to start for people that want to make a positive impact. I should say just a place to start, but we really do encourage people to do that. And also want to thank again our sponsors, GROA and Certainty. And I want to thank Huntsman Architectural Group. Wonderful to talk with all of you. And Tracy, Haki, Allison, we really appreciate everybody being here. So thank you so much.